This emergency meeting of the Kaufman County Commissioners Court is called to order. It's 2 p.m. We're on the second floor. I'm sorry, Bobby, are you ready? Okay. We're on the second floor conference meeting room. Our Commissioners Court room is being taken up by voting. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and imminent threat it poses to public health and safety of Kaufman County and its citizens, the Kaufman County Commissioners Court finds that this emergency meeting is necessary. I've been working on this with the District Attorney's Office this morning. I think really what kicked this whole thing off was the situation in the courthouse last week. As I think everybody knows, we've had positive cases in the courthouse. We don't really have totals on that yet. And a lot of people working in the courthouse are extremely nervous about the situation. So basically, I just felt like the thing to do was to close the courthouse on Friday. The sheriff volunteered to come in, and he has a process that they've been using in the jail that sterilizes all the surfaces. He did that over the weekend. And I felt like we needed to get together as a Commissioners Court. Really, what initiated this was to figure out what we need to do about our facilities in the county. All of you know about the dialogue about wearing masks. Everybody knows about the increasing number of hospitalizations that we have in North Texas. And so we have two orders that I would like for us to discuss today. One of them has to do with county properties, and the other one has to do with commercial properties in the county. And I think if that's all right with y'all, I can just go ahead and read. We'll start with the county property, which is a shorter version. And I just for the record, go ahead and read that. Would that be all right? Everybody? Because I know some of y'all haven't read it. I actually think I'll leave out all the whereases because I think we all kind of all know what the whereas is. And it says, now therefore be it ordered by the Commissioners Court, all county employees when less than 6 feet apart from other persons shall wear face masks within Kaufman County buildings to limit the spread. All visitors to Kaufman County buildings when less than 6 feet from other persons shall wear face masks to limit the spread. All Kaufman County employees where applicable. There are some employees that are governed by other authorities, courts, shall practice social distancing within Kaufman County buildings. All visitors to Kaufman County buildings where applicable shall practice social distancing to limit the spread. And this order will be effective 7:30 on June 30th until terminated early. So let's throw that one down for discussion. Who'd like to get into it?
What are the Kaufman County numbers, Steve, related to the spike in our hospitalizations?
I don't know. We just got the latest deal from DSHS, and I have been working on it all day. And it is jumbled up, and I'm trying to sort through it. And I can't give you any numbers right now. I hope to have you a report by the end of the day, but I'm going to say that they're probably about 500.
Well, I looked right before I got here, and it showed that the total number is 518. But that's from day one.
Well, that's what our numbers are going by day one.
But we don't know what a current number is, not a cumulative number.
Well,
or is that a current active case number?
Well, what I do is the total number of cases from day one, and then I figure in what they send me as far as the ones that have been presumed recovered, and then I subtract that to get the active cases. And I've been working on that and haven't finished it for a current total. Before they stopped, we were up to about 67, 70 active cases in the county.
But when you do the presuming of the number, you do it by what? How do you come with that number?
The numbers come from the Department of State
No,
Health
but I
Services.
mean, on how many people that you take off the list?
It all comes from them. I mean,
It all comes from them?
they send me the number of new cases. They have a column where they show the ones recovered. So I put those in there, subtract them, and that gives us active cases.
That's why I'm just asking, where your number came from. You weren't doing it.
No,
So
I'm-
everybody
No.
just needs to know that we're not making up a number.
No.
Somebody else.
I'm not gonna make up
No,
numbers.
I know that. I'm just saying. You know what I'm saying.
I think Steve would agree with me that, as a matter of fact, I just talked to one of the second guy at DSH yesterday. He called to tell me that they were gonna start reporting again. I think y'all probably know about that whole scenario. He told me that they realized that their numbers had not been accurate. And there were he said there were a lot of reasons for that, a lot of reasons for the mistakes. But he said since going into all that, he says they fixed that. I think my observation is the only number that really means anything for us as an area is the hospitalization numbers. If you're going to look at something that's probably a pretty solid, reliable number, that's the number I think that I trust. Do you agree with that, Steve?
You know, pretty much what our hospital numbers are what we need to look at.
Unfortunately, that's not a Kaufman County number, that's a number that's an area. But we don't, since most of our people, I would assume, are being hospitalized in Dallas County, we don't really know how many of those hospitalizations there are.
Now, as far as THR Kaufman, they said their numbers are up a little bit, but they've still got plenty of space in both regular beds and ICU beds. And they stopped reporting because their numbers had dropped to where they only had a couple of patients in the hospital. But they said if it reaches starts coming up again, they'll start feeding us the numbers.
Okay, so since we're talking about Kaufman County facilities, what's the numbers, what's the specific information? Let's just talk about related to our own workforce.
I think we have about 10 confirmed cases in the county. We didn't have any confirmed cases in the county up until about maybe 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago. And I think we have about 10 cases now.
Confirmed as active or as antibodies or?
Confirmed, I believe that they've all been swab tested. One of the swab tests, there are various swab tests out there. But, and all of those, I think all of those except one are people that work in the main courthouse. We do have a person in the annex that has been exposed. The person that lives in the same household has tested positive, so that person's quarantined. Two now.
One lives in the household and one's a girlfriend.
Two. We have two
In this
people
building.
quarantined?
No,
Two
being
employees
tested.
quarantined?
Okay.
One lives in the household and one's a girlfriend that works downstairs.
Well, and it's not just here, too. I mean, it's in our building, too. Same thing, so.
I didn't hear what you said.
It's our building, too.
Right.
Well, mine
Also-
too. Mine had the same problem. They had somebody exposed, but they were both
No.
negative.
But I don't
This
think
is-
any of those
this is-
people in your building have been confirmed yet. They've all been tested, but I don't think any of them have been
But
confirmed.
one of them is actually living.
Right,
with someone
right.
that's positive, so that's what I'm saying. That was the situation she.
I didn't know they had been tested.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean,
So
he might be
we
out of the
know,
doghouse now, but.
we know that he tested positive or we know he was potentially
His
exposed?
spouse tested positive, so I would assume that they kiss every once in a while. So I would say that he's exposed.
Well, I don't
Right,
know.
I'm not.
But Commissioner Hatch, it's quarantined and not confirmed.
Okay, that was my question.
Yeah. And just because your spouse catches it, doesn't mean that you're gonna get it. I mean, prove that.
So we had that same situation in the road and bridge crew. I had an employee who carried two confirmed positives relatives to the hospital and was tested and not
Well, I understand that
not active.
Yeah.
being close to somebody, living with somebody.
They live together.
Yeah.
No,
Spouse.
this family lived together.
Yeah.
If I could bring it back, we'll talk about the county facilities on this particular order. We have a lot of places we have a number of places in our buildings, I use this annex as an example. Most people come into the annex through the back, but you can't stay 6 feet away from people because that hall is narrow and there's always people going back and forth in the hall. I think the same situation coming into the courthouse, you can't remain 6 feet away when you come into the front door of the courthouse because you go through security and there's, a lot of times there's people stacked up. Those are the areas, and in the halls too sometimes, that I'm concerned about. Halls, bathrooms, and elevators.
I think we're going the right direction.
What, you think we should do this?
I think so. I think we're going the right direction. It's a pain in the butt to wear these, you can't hardly breathe and everything else, but bottom line, we need to be respectful of everybody else. It's kind of like a wreck. Driving through intersections, every time we go out, you don't know if anybody's going to hit you or they don't, and then if they do hit you, you don't know how bad it's going to be. So, each and every one of us might react different, and for the most part, we're blessed to the fact that the majority of us have symptoms or asymptomatic, but you're positive. But there are a lot of them, as it progresses, that it's a bad thing for them. And, we haven't lost, 5 people in Kaufman County now? Which is great, 4 or 5, whatever. But, this is great that it's happening that way, but a lot of people are on ventilators and they're sick everywhere else. I don't think we're asking a whole lot for them to come to the courthouse and be respectful to the people that have to deal with hundreds of people every day. Because basically what you're doing, when you come to the courthouse, you're being respectful of the people that are our employees that deal with everybody, all walks of life, every day, day in and day out. And I don't think it's asking too much of them to be respectful of our people. So,
Not just a few minutes to walk up to a window, buy a tag, and go back out.
this is terrible.
Not much discomfort for people.
We did the facilities walkthrough down to South Campus, and all I want to do is run outside and try to get some fresh air, because we were all wearing this, and of course, it's terrible. But there's a reason for it. So, I think if we look at it through those eyes, that we're just asking people to be respectful to our people, because they're exposed to a lot of people, and they're coming to work because they have to and they want to.
One of the things that Karen wrote into this for me was that you have to wear a mask if you stay 6 feet away from them. So, obviously people that work in their offices and things like that.
It's tough. It's tough. We're all humans. We all interact, and the next thing you know, you're within 2 or 3 foot.
Yeah.
It's not intentional. It's just kind of get conversing and are taking care of business. So it's just it's hard to do.
It's a lifestyle. Anybody else?
I just think I think we're at the point now where we just really have a choice. We've got to do this to prevent anything further. It's kind of got to be forward, we're damned if we're doing, we're damned if we don't. So, may as well err on the side of caution and be done with it.
Well, it's kind of hard if you're asking everybody else to do something.
Right.
So,
Right.
and we're just asking to be respectful here, that's it. We're not demanding that people wear masks anywhere, that's their choice. I don't want to interfere with
We're not demanding that
actual
yet.
choice.
Sorry.
We're not demanding that yet.
So that may be the next thing that comes out of Boston.
Anybody else? Are there any modifications you would like to see to this?
Well, I think it's important to remember that the science on masks is debatable. Particularly it depends on the mask you wear. But I have to agree with Commissioner Farber that, that there's a lot of inertia and that it's probably always wise to err on the side of caution, particularly in the relatively limited transactions that the general public will have. Now, this is gonna impact our employees quite a bit, because this talks about both visitors as well as employees. So I think there does have to be, even the CDC and WHO websites all talk about there are instances where adaptations and mitigations need to be, permissible.
I'll give you a good example, and I don't know, I haven't talked to Brenda Samples, but I mean, I'll use this as an example. This is just my opinion, talking about mitigations. The ladies, the people who are the clerks in the tax office, I would argue are 6 feet away from their customers because they are all sitting behind a screen. And so, and it's above head height. That would be my interpretation, but I don't know if anybody else. So I think they're protected.
Well, I'm agreeing with that. I think any place in the courthouse that they can relatively keep 6 feet or
Even if it's 6 feet like this.
Right, or have a divider. So if they sneeze, it's going to hit the glass and the person next to you. I think you're comfortable, but I think if it's just an open space like we are here, if I stood over here next to the judge, you saw the fire marshal coming over at the end, he slid backwards in the room. I mean, you have a choice to do that. If you're trapped in a chair in the corner, you don't have a choice to do anything for your space. So I guess if you make it a rule, if you're going to go ahead and invade somebody's space, you better put on the back.
I think
That's all I'm saying. I mean, I noticed the girls in our tax office, they've been wearing not for license sale, but the judge's office. They've been wearing it because their desks are all three of them. Plus with it being very judge here, they all been wearing it, just in respect to each other. And we have had to tell them to do that. So I think that's just common sense.
Are we gonna provide masks for our employees?
we are providing masks. We have, in my opinion, a lot of masks.
Okay.
Well, I just, back to feasibility and adaptations, I mean, that's on the CDC's list of recommended modifications, and I'm not sure if in reading this draft order if feasibility and adaptations are permissible, but
I think, Commissioner, when it says where applicable,
Where
those
applicable.
languages, that gives you, if an employee where applicable can practice social distancing, then you don't need a mask. If you're working outside and your crew can work outside in the open air, and I'm saying 5, I know it's 6 feet, I mean, they're not going to measure, then you are,
Right.
then it's applicable because you have a different task.
Well,
no, I got you,
So tell me what you
Judge,
mean about
but
that.
I'm talking about things like, for instance, CDC doesn't recommend children under 2 wear a mask. So if a parent has to come to the tax office and they bring their small child, then that would be an adaptation that, is recommended, but I'm not
I think
sure.
everybody else is wearing masks.
Well,
Maybe.
in the county order, and Karen may can speak to that, we didn't put an age limit on there in this order right here. So that would be parents' discretion. If it's something's not stated, then it's not limited, unless I'm getting the orders
Well, it
confused.
says all visitors, all Kaufman County employees.
We discussed the 10-year-old thing, and did you talk about what you told me in the? You had
Yeah,
that
I
in the other
did,
order.
I
What
did,
is
but
the
that's in the
basis
other
for
order.
that? The basis for the 10-year-old thing?
Well, what I had said about the 10-year-old, under 10-year-old, and I don't know why the governor did that in the governor's order that we kind of looked at, or that they used the language under 10. I just said for responsibility for cases, juveniles, or you're juvenile under the law for conduct 10 to 16. So maybe that's how they came up with 10. So that's not in our order.
We could modify that language though. We could say all visitors over the age of 10.
Who picks 10?
That's what he was
Governor.
asking me. Why did we say 10?
CDC says 2,
No, but 2 is, they'll put a mask on someone under 2.
under 2.
Right, you just don't.
But the
anybody
converse
over
of that is
10.
anyone over 10, it's a little bit different than what Commissioner said, should wear a mask. And we were speaking earlier, why 10? I surmised, I have no information, 10 is the age of juvenile responsibility. I don't know why they put it in there.
I just asked
I
because,
just said that.
because to me, I feel like there's more transmittal between 6 and 8 years old
Probably.
than there are adults.
But a 2-year-old doesn't need to be covered. You got the doctor back there, that would not probably be a good idea.
Right.
The CDC also addresses, let me just read it. Some individuals with developmental disabilities, sensory integration concerns, or tactile sensitivities, certain mental health conditions, or limited cognitive ability may have a negative reaction to wearing a cloth face covering. So I'm just, and I recognize that that's probably, a very infrequent situation, but I just feel like we at least there ought to be some language that would address it.
Well, you could always put on any of those where applicable or in the best interest of
I think
the
that'd be,
employees or the best interest of the visitors. You always use broad language. I mean, I don't know who wrote the CDC orders. You never use specific language because you always will leave somebody off of the list. Applicable language always is better because that's governed by good sense.
Makes sense.
Where would you insert that?
It was the first draft, Judge.
We
It
had
was
it.
the first draft on 1 and 2, and you asked me to make that change, so I took it out.
Okay.
But that was why it was just kind of a broad brush.
So to answer your question, Judge, it was all Kaufman County employees where applicable, if we're looking at 1. And then it's also very cumbersome. When less than 6 feet from another person shall wear a face mask within Kaufman County buildings to limit the spread. Number 2 would read, if we included it, all visitors to Kaufman County where applicable, when less than 6 feet from other persons.
Let's just add that, let's just add those 2 words.
Sure.
Does that help you think?
I think that would just,
That works.
I think that would just address it and would give, our staff some latitude to use their judgment in these circumstances. As opposed to saying, nope, don't come in here with that kid or your son or whatever.
Okay, so that order would be amended after it says where it's after employees and where it says visitors, it would say where applicable.
Right.
Yes.
Anybody else have anything to say about this? Is there a motion for approval?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion from Commissioner Hunt. to
Approve with the modification.
To approve this order. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, Commissioner Cates, discussion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. That motion carries. Now we'll move on to the other ones a little bit longer. And again, this really wasn't my thought for today, but it just this is just sort of where we drifted to add the commercial businesses into this. I'm gonna, of course, Karen and Judge Wiley did all the work on this and cut and pasted from other things that they saw. I got an order from the city of Kaufman that has a lot of this same language in it. One of the things that I would point out about this order is that there's no provision in here for a penalty. I've talked to all of the cities that have staff since last, I guess I was talking to them Thursday and Friday. Kaufman and Terrell were intending, or Kaufman just passed or Judge Jordan just signed an order just a little while ago, and I believe Terrell has it on their agenda for tomorrow. They seem to be inclined to pass an order that would basically resonate with this. Crandall is supportive of it, and I can't remember now if their intention, I talked to Jana, I think, I don't know if we're gonna pass an order, but they're in support of our doing this. Forney, I talked to the city manager in Forney. He just said they didn't have any plans to create an order, but he didn't think that they would be sort of looking for it. There's another city in the Metroplex that had a sort of a blow up, with Tarrant County. He said he didn't think they would be doing that in Forney. They would accept what we were doing. They did talk to Maybank, and he talked to Brian Martin, the city manager there. He seemed to be, didn't seem to have any objection.
And Kemp has already implemented it.
Kemp has implemented on to the subject of, back to the subject of penalties. The reason that I suggested that we not put penalties in here, Kaufman has a penalty in their order that is between $1,000 and $1,000 per day for a violation. We don't have the resources to enforce something like this really, other than the sheriff's department. I guess the fire marshal's office can do it, but that's not a very good force. Cities have got code enforcement, fire departments and police departments, and I think if they want to pass an order, if they want to reflect what we're doing here and put some penalties, that's up to them. Virtually all of these businesses are going to be in the cities that we're talking. These organizations are going to be city businesses. We don't have many in the county. So, can I read the now therefore thing? Just to bore everybody. Now therefore be it ordered by the Commissioners Court of Kaufman County, effective 11:59 p.m. on January 29th, to continue until modified. June. Thank you, Terry. The health and safety it says all commercial businesses and entities open to the general public in Kaufman County providing goods and services directly to the general public must develop a health and safety policy. The health and safety policy must require at a minimum that all employees or visitors 10 years or older to the commercial entity's business premises or other facilities wear face coverings in an area or while performing an activity which will necessarily involve close contact or proximity to co-workers or the general public, where 6 feet of separation is not feasible. It says in number 2, health and safety policy required to be developed by this order and also include other implementation or mitigating measures that they feel is necessary. They must post their health and safety policy as required by this order in a conspicuous location. And then 3, commercial entities and businesses shall develop and implement a health and safety policy required by this order within 5 calendar days. The only thing in our requirements really is just for the requirement that people wear a face covering if they cannot remain 6 feet separation. So,
Question, nearly all these businesses are in the cities, right?
I can't think, we probably have some places out in the county, but I can't think of very many.
No, there might be some convenience stores or something like
A
that.
hardware store out,
Yeah.
Rodney?
So how's this gonna, I don't know, and I probably need to go to the cities too. I'll probably go to Terrell tomorrow. When you think through this, it's not so much the servers I'm worried about, but the consumers. And one of the commissioners or actually 2 of the commissioners have already been in one of my locations already. When you're eating, obviously you gotta have it off. But my main concern is my kitchen health. It gets pretty hot in that kitchen. And I certainly don't want to be dealing with workers passing out as well. How do we do that?
I don't have a good answer for you on that. I know that my youngest son is in college at Texas State, and he works at plumber. Chicken wing place is huge, and yesterday he was telling me that they ordered 3 different orders, and all of them 400 or more wings for parties that they were doing. And he does the fry cooking and dishwashing and whatever in the kitchen, and they're required the whole time to wear their masks except when they're on break. They haven't had a single problem. He said that, he said it took a little bit of getting used to. I'm not saying that you need to wear masks or they need to wear masks. I'm just saying that, I'm just telling you what they're doing. And of course, Austin and, how they are. I mean, Austin's Austin and San Marcos, it's the same thing. But he said it doesn't. He said it bothered him a little bit first. He finally got used to it. He said, but not bad. They gave him a little bit of option too. They do wear face shields. And some of them don't like masks, so they put just a face shield. I said it would eliminate a spray if for some reason they were spraying that. And all the servers work well. So I don't know. I don't know a good answer, for your kitchen help. I think that, if I don't know. I mean, I really don't.
I don't want to turn this into a public hearing.
Yeah.
When we had our task force and the different, groups came together to come up with rules, the ones that did the restaurants, there was an exception that they included in their deal for the kitchen people for that reason. So, servers and stuff, they wanted them to wear the masks, but they did have the exception for the cooks and stuff in the back to, keep them from having some type of action, either a flash that catches the mask on fire and burns them or whatever. So, and that was done by the people that own the restaurants and stuff throughout the county and came up with that, if you want to.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I'm just saying, I'm just explaining to him what they did.
I was just gonna ask Dr. Rachel, are the face shields, is that considered to be adequate without the mask, just the shield in front? As I've seen some businesses in Terrell that are doing that with their employees.
I think you could say that the face shields would be also helpful, but I don't know that you would have the exact same effect. So I'm not sure I could say that they would be equivalent, but they, I think to address the question, however the other counties have been doing it for this long, if they specifically are outlining for certain areas to be excluded from these orders, I haven't seen that, but I wouldn't be opposed to trying to mimic those types of orders. This has been going on for quite a long time, and it's a true question, Mr. Lawson. I've been in operating rooms where the temperature was extremely high. I've been in places where the ambient temperature makes a huge difference in your comfort levels, but it doesn't make a difference in your ability to function. After you get used to it, it is certainly, it's a nuisance and it's no fun. And when you first get in there and get used to it, I guarantee you it'll be difficult. But so Mr. Barber, I'm not sure about the answer to that, but if they have other exceptions to it in the other counties, I'd be interested to do something similar to that. But I'm pretty sure the way that's been done is the way that we're writing it.
Okay.
So let me, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, back to where I started asking questions before we got sidetracked. Most of those businesses are in cities, right?
I think that's fair.
So why don't we leave it up to the cities to take care of their local jurisdictions? Why are we compelled to do it countywide versus letting each individual city decide to do what they want to do?
Well, we do have some businesses out in the county, and one of the things that I think is a concern is if a city implements restrictions, the concern is that people would drive business out of the city into another city. And then the other thing is that just confusion in the public, not necessarily knowing what the rules are. That's my thought.
So let me add to in a related concern similar to the Kaufman County order, and I'm referring to CDC information I researched and printed this morning. The CDC again does make these adaptation and feasibility mitigation recommendations for people that number one should not wear face coverings. So that's children under 2 or anyone, this is a CDC quote, anyone that has trouble breathing, right? And then individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing. Those people are often adversely impacted. And they do, in that instance, recommend at a minimum the clear face coverings. And again, people with developmental disabilities, sensory integration, or tactile sensitivities, mental health conditions, or limited cognitive ability. They also talk about in their recommendations individuals that should not wear face coverings while engaged in activities that might cause the face covering to become wet. That makes it exponentially more difficult to breathe. And also individuals that are engaged in high intensity activities, perhaps like being a cook over a hot stove. In those instances, they talk about you should consider that you could effectively consider conducting those activities in locations that utilize either greater ventilation or air exchangers. And then, of course, all face masks are really designed to enhance social distancing. I mean, that's really what it's about. So to the extent that you can, Rod, that you could have your kitchen help, aggressively engage in social distancing, that would tend to mitigate an environment where perhaps wearing a mask, is difficult. So once again, I think that the order should have some flexibility to be able, I don't know if as applicable works, but some sort of language that would take into consideration these several exceptions that even the CDC recommends.
Would those exceptions in that CDC, would that include people working in the kitchen?
I don't know, it doesn't address that specifically. I mean, I read you the language. Consider conducting activity in a location with greater ventilation or air exchange. And where possible, maintain the physical distance. But there are some people that they recommend they don't wear face masks. Some of those I've already cited. And in the end, I sort of have to tag on to Commissioner Hunt. In the end, there's a personal responsibility that all of us have. If you're, if in your heart you believe that it's hazardous to go into a business in the county that doesn't have these restrictions, then don't go in that business. So, I mean, there is some, I think you just can't legislate, if you will, or order to cover every situation. So at some point, common sense and personal decision-making has to take place. The dilemma, the flip side of that is that it's also, sometimes it's the right thing to do to be considerate of others, and their concerns and their fears. So I also don't have a good answer for this, but I do think that if we're going to go forward with some sort of a comprehensive order, it should have some caveat that individual issues, can be addressed or mitigated based on some of these other guidelines at least from the CDC. I'm not so big on the World Health Organization, but at least from the CDC.
Okay, Dr. Rager, go ahead.
I was going to echo what Commissioner Kay said. I think that's very well put. Just a suggestion, but maybe just putting some kind of language that says except where specifically prohibited by CDC guidelines. I think that allows there to be a lot less Joe's opinion, Mike's opinion, Peter's opinion kind of in there, and you have guidelines, and you have those exceptions covered. I don't know if that makes it too broad, so that's y'all's job. but I think going on what Commissioner Kay says, I think she's very well said. That's a reasonable way that I would say to put it.
Well, Dr. Roger, I don't think it's overly broad, but what you will end up doing is, putting that burden back on an individual walking in saying, my 12-year-old has asthma and he can't wear that. And so then you've got the businesses mitigating that. And so that you will have those, we can make up random scenarios, but I think what we have to do is follow the law and give them an out on the CDC because we're figuring out more things all the time.
Could you put something in there that this, except for this, something about if this order doesn't apply in situations that are
Well, I think,
accepted, that are exceptional by, or accepted by the CDC?
or you could do it the other way instead, but to be consistent with the CDC's, face mask, guidelines that have been promulgated, use some fancy word like that, or just something consistent with. You want to make it like that, Karen, don't you think? Instead of accept as, do you want to accept it?
Maybe
or-
something like, but not to contravene or contradict the CDC guidelines?
Yes, but not in
I mean,
contravention
makes it
of the CDC guidelines. Just,
Because I think that's where pluggers and all them, I think they're using CDC guidelines.
who is,
Pluggers, all the people in
Oh, yeah.
Austin and San Marcos, that's what they're using, and that's where they came up with the plastic shield. Some of the people using it, like Tom said, he was more comfortable with the shield than with the mask. The mask is so much easier. He said, I just step back, nobody around, I pull it down a little bit, breathe on it,
Sure.
or whatever, or change it out constantly. The mask, you gotta keep it clean, work on it all the time. But people, they don't like that close comfort, or if they've got something that they're allergic to, masks they're not. So I think we ought to be able to use a mask in the kitchen help deal, not necessarily servers. Don't breathe on it, and go around it, keeps it off the food, I guess. Kind of like a glass shield over serving.
so Karen, you would just put that in number one, right?
What I would do is maybe put it as a number, add a number 4
Okay.
that says, in the event that any provision of a health and safety policy contradicts the CDC, the CDC would
Guidelines.
dominate, would,
I'd recommend that it say CDC and Texas Department of State Health Services.
okay, and CDC and DSHS.
Does DSHS have any policies?
They follow the
No, they
CDC.
just refer to CDC on everything, is that right?
Well, they have some specific recommendations, some protocols that specifically address businesses where the target audience is 10 or more individuals in a group or less than 10. I mean, there are some.
Well, Commissioner, do you want to drill down with that specific? Because what y'all are effectively doing in one is telling the county and businesses they need to wear face masks. We're not even there, we weren't even doing anything else than that. So that's all, you know what I'm saying? Really?
And well, let me ask you this, Judge. Some of the orders that I've already seen, for instance, I was in Tyler yesterday, and so their orders there, which when I read their little posting, really referred to this TDSH guideline that I printed. Talk about, for instance, in restaurant locales, talk about the wearing of a face mask into the facility and exiting the facility, but at your group, within your group, 10 or less, which is operating in compliance with the 50% guidelines, which incorporate social distancing, then you're not required to have a face mask in that setting. It's pretty difficult to run a restaurant if every time you want to take a drink of tea or take a bite of your burger, you got to take your mask off.
But you would in the waiting area or going out or standing in line.
When you enter and when you exit the facility, that's right out of the state health.
So we could have this number 4 that says, in the event, if you all want to, in the event of any provision of a health and safety code policy contradicts the provisions set forth by the CDC and DSHS, the CDC and DSHS provisions prevail. If you want something like that.
Well, the health
Just an
and safety
idea.
policy is really pretty vague. All it says in here
Well,
is that wear the face coverings for employees or visitors. So if that's all that we're requiring, I mean, I guess it's kind of, it's just health and safety policy. It's like they're really adopting a policy, but they're not. But the governor's gonna come out and it's just laid out his guidelines, right? That we have to follow, no matter what we say here.
Well, that's what
No,
he's
he
doing.
surrendered, he kicked that back to the county judges and the mayor
Everybody's
last
got
week.
So what happens if we?
So, but I guess a clear health and safety policy, if we don't have one, and
That we're requiring them to prepare one and post it.
so if my health and safety policy is go out back and wash with the dirty bar or something after I clean my car, that,
No, our
there's
health-
absolutely no guidelines
Our
whatsoever.
health and
for-
safety policy pursuant to one gives a minimum. We don't give a maximum. That's what we're doing.
That's what I say, one thing.
That's really, we're
So
saying
why call it health
minimum.
and safety policy, just say wear your mask for everybody?
They may want to take advantage of, right, they may already have health and safety
Yeah.
policies. I don't know, just write this into their policy.
I mean,
And we give that example in number 2, where we say you may include, and we just give an example, which would be even more, which is broader, but it gives it back to the businesses. So for lack of better terminology, your judge in court is kicking that back to the individual businesses. Saying, if you want to take temperatures, if you want to do some kind of screening, if you want to, all these other things, we're putting it back on the business owners to do that. That's what this order does. If y'all want more specific orders, like Commissioner Kate said, like over in Smith County, that's a whole different set of orders. This is broad, a must cover and stay 6 feet apart, may do more, and now we've added, well, we're including CDC, which is a little more specific even, but those are guidelines. That's what this order does.
If we just left it the way it is, then we're basically saying, look, you folks, your rule, and we're basically gonna go with it. All we're doing is really asking everybody to distance.
And wear a
6
mask if
feet.
you can't distance.
Yeah, wear a mask if you can't.
But I think you have to make, particularly for the restaurant industry, you have to give some guidelines. Because this order, if I read it now, says, if you go in there for a birthday party with 6 people in your family, that you all have to sit there and wear a mask. Is that an incorrect reading? It says you will wear a face covering. But that's not what the TDS talks about.
Well, it says to close contact or proximity to co-workers or the general public, which exempts me and you, Ken, if we go in there together. We have to stay 6 feet away from
Okay.
everybody else if
All
you
right.
read it verbatim, which will necessarily involve close contact or proximity to the co-workers, if you're a worker, or general public where 6 feet separation is not feasible. So if some stranger walks over the table to speak to us while you and I have now taken off our face covering and we're starting to eat, then we need to put on our masks, what that says.
Okay, so that would allow for my family to be at Chuck E. Cheese and eat and have our
But I
birthday
don't think you're
party.
gonna be at Chuck E. Cheese. I don't think that's gonna happen.
Steve,
I was gonna say that the plan that's being discussed, that was part of that task force deal that they put together, and it went to the chambers of commerce, and it was put out for everybody. Now, they couldn't make everybody use it or adopt it, but one was made for everybody, and it's out there for them to use, based upon what the task force did.
let me ask the group this question. Commissioner, this question. If we implement this policy, which is being implemented in other places, do you think that it would help reduce the spread? That's really what we're trying to do, right?
I think that's basically
An
what we're trying to
individual-
do. We're trying to make people understand that they need the right policy, and maybe we will back them up if they want to say, look, everybody that comes into our business needs to wear a mask. And people don't have the right just to walk through that door and force themselves on the business without wearing a mask.
Well, even the Dallas order says that you have to wear a mask when you go into a business unless you can maintain 6 feet of distance.
Right.
So you go into a store in Dallas, according to that order, you go into a store in Dallas and it's empty and there's not anybody else in there, you don't have to wear a mask to go into Dallas. Now, that's not what the general public, that's not their perception. But I'm not too sure how bad of a deal that is. So that's my question. Will this, if we can put the number 4 language in there that Karen was saying to address these specific situations, but I guess I just wonder whether or not, how do you feel like will it affect people's behavior in such a way that it will help the spread?
Well, I've been getting a lot of feedback, I guess, from people and just people emailing me and calling me about this whole situation. I think if nothing else, it's going to help put people's mind at ease that we're trying to do something to mitigate this whole thing. It makes them feel better, and they're going to do it. You know, I mean, because it still comes down to what you're going to do or not do. You know, I may decide I'm not going to go to that business because they're going to force me to wear a mask in there, but I may only go to a business that does force it. You know, so I think it's just. That's what the public wants us to do, then that's, you know, we work for them, let's do it.
Well, and I will tell you that all the communication I've had, it's been quite the number. I haven't had one person, every single one of them has been telling me that this is an issue.
Right,
yeah.
me too.
Same thing.
I'm not arguing that either. I'm getting the same
Well,
from everybody.
I'll just say that everybody that's on social media and is, you know, more of the electronic communicator, I would agree with you, but I've had walk-ins, particularly more rural elderly people that are verbally not in favor of face masks. So
I'm sure there's more than one opinion out there, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I think the science,
add what Terry said.
you know, despite studies, the science on wearing masks is not settled. You know, but I think there's always a justification for erring on the side of caution. You know, without being, as long as you can do that without being too intrusive. I mean, we already have, we have, I don't even really know what the law on this is, Judge, you may know. But I mean, it's pretty common in America to see those signs, no shirt, no shoes, no service. So, except in discriminatory issues, I think that a business does have the right to set the atmospherics in their business, right? With it, as long as you're not violating any of the titles related to protected category discrimination. So, as long as this language,
Number 4.
or wherever, even as the judge pointed out, where this really, my concern about restaurants talks about employees.
I think it makes sense to put that number 4 in there because there's always going to be, and I think Mr. Lawson brings up a good one there. I mean, there are going to be some situations, and maybe that's not a good one, but there are going to be situations that just isn't going to work.
And I think you're right that what we want to do is, and it's y'all's decision, obviously. It's not pass the buck, but what people I think resent is for an entity, a government entity, to be very heavy-handed. We're just telling them at the minimum, guys, socially distance. If you can't wear a mask, or whatever you want to do inside your business, that's on top of, go for it. And by the way, y'all haven't set a penalty. You're leaving it to the local control to implement any type of penalties for them failing to comply.
Criminal trespass or something like that?
No, sir, we will not be
No,
criminal
no,
trespassing
no.
anybody.
Where
Don't
you're
even
going.
say that word. That's not a
Well,
criminal
I wouldn't
trespass.
think so, but
No,
I'm-
sir. This
Calm
will be-
down, calm down,
No,
Judge,
I'm like,
calm
we're
down.
not, it's not a class B. This
Let's
is,
try to
no,
get good.
So the cities can supersede what the county says.
no,
No.
sir. But
So,
we have no penalty, so in
Yeah,
the
no
absence
penalty.
of a penalty, if they create a penalty, because there's not a penalty, and
If a city creates
yes,
that.
thank you,
They
they
can do it.
can. Y'all would not have created a penalty, but it is not a criminal trespass, Marshall, until you ask them to leave for a neutral reason.
Correct.
But I would suggest, if anybody within the hearing of my voice, that this would not escalate to a criminal trespass. I would just say, that is some case I would not want to see at the office.
And Obviously, this is being streamed because I'm receiving text here. One of the questions was from the fireworks industry, similar to the restaurant industry. What if someone goes to a fireworks stand and they're not maintaining the 6-foot social distancing or wearing a mask? And they complain to Kaufman County, they call 911.
Well, first of all, I would tell the business to provide a mask. See, sometimes we can eliminate these problems. Get a mask. If you don't have a mask, put a shirt around your mouth that you've got, just a little
Face
t-shirt.
covering.
Use a face covering. And I bet you we can move on down the road. So all he wants is to sell a firework, the other person just wants to receive it. That's a 5-minute transaction at most. So let's just be creative. And this is not to prosecute people for enjoying their freedoms. Not Kaufman County.
I agree, I'm just sharing the message.
I appreciate it.
Well, I guess I'll call the question. Are y'all, anybody else have anything else they would like to add? Okay, if someone was gonna make a motion, you might want to make a motion to include the language that Karen read to us.
Could you restate it, Karen?
So,
Karen, it's worth reading the whole thing, probably, don't you think? It's too warm.
I've just read it, but I mean,
do you want me to read it or do you want me just to restate?
just read the, I think item 4 is all this.
Okay, so, basically it will be a motion to adopt the order regarding COVID-19 health and safety policy for commercial businesses in Kaufman County as presented, with the addition of number 4, which states, in the event any provision of a health and safety code policy contradicts the provisions set forth by the CDC and DSHS, comma, the CDC and DSHS provisions prevail, period.
If anyone wants to make a motion, just make a motion. I don't think you have to restate it. You can just make a motion.
I'll make a motion that, with the addition of item 4 as read by our attorney, that otherwise this order be adopted by the court.
We have that motion for adoption of the order as amended. Commissioner Case, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, Commissioner Phillips. Discussion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. That motion carries. Under the manner of this broad thing that we're doing here with health and safety due to COVID, I have one other thing to just informational, more than not an action item, but I've had conversations starting this morning with Judge Wiley and Karen, and then on with Mary. One of the problems we've had with cases, we've had positive cases in the county, and I've notified the employee on all email. Of course, we can't identify who the people are in any way, what department they work in or anything like that. And I know Mary's had lots of people, they don't know if they had close contact with the person or not because they don't know who it is, and we can't tell them. So I think what Mary is going to work on is offering every employee the opportunity to sign a waiver, a HIPAA waiver. So I'd be happy to sign a waiver that says if I'm positive for COVID, you can share that information with employees in the county. And I think that will, I'm sure we'll have more cases eventually, and I think that will help. You have anything to add to that, Mary?
No, I mean,
Okay.
just making sure that I'm notified.
Yeah.
I mean, cause you
I'll-
knowing 10 and I knowing 5, I'm like.
I'll remind the department heads, I'll send an email to the department to remind them to make sure you're in the loop on all that stuff. And this won't require commissioner action for us to do this, it's just HR action.
Well, I think that goes in a similar vein to knowing what the what the positives are in your particular city and locale. If you can at least know where these positives are in the facilities, then at least you can self-assess if you might have been exposed.
Yeah, and we.
If I were in the courthouse that day or in the South Campus that day.
And I just encourage y'all that once we get this waiver out, that they haven't written the waiver yet, but encourage everybody in the county, if they're willing, to go ahead and sign the waiver and get it back to HR, because it won't do any good if nobody signs it. Anything else on that? Commissioner Phillips, do you have something you'd like to say?
If you're through talking.
Wow.
I'll make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Mr. Phillips moves to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, Commissioner Barber's discussion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. That motion carries.